the time time
Time value.
time value, and for what the other course name, for the stock, like the preference stock,
Yeah,
like it
trying to
said
get
P,
this share
right,
price.
pre over, yeah, equal D, R minus the growth rate and so forth. I always get those mixed up, and like
Mhm. Okay. We will definitely touch upon them. We could even run through some examples. Anyone else? Okay. So I'll start by going through this past paper. It's what I did when I did this course last year. And some good questions, gives you an idea of what you can expect on the exam. Uh, but additionally, I should make the point, there is always a review session that Frey Ellis does before the exam. I cannot recommend highly enough to go to that review session. Right? It usually takes up the whole day. I'm not sure if he has done it yet, but if he hasn't, you definitely want to be there. Even if you are confident in the course, you should still be there, because there's something that you will definitely learn, even if it's a hint on what's coming on the exam. Okay, all that said, let's jump right in. Cool. So this is a sample question, and there is, broadly speaking, two major parts for this course: the very theoretical portion and the, as we said, the calculation formula type of section. So for this type of question, we would mainly be seeing the the formula, sorry, the theoretical. This is the past paper I wanted to start with. Let me check. Ah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, this one. Oh, another good point. You have access to all these past papers via your UWE link. So if you go on UWE link and type in the name of the course, MGMT 2023, you can get all the past papers from this course from last year straight down to 2013, I think. So yeah, you can find those there. Okay. Now, I'm wondering, did the structure of the exam change? I remember when I was doing it, it was along these rules. So you get
It's
four,
multiple choice now.
it's all multiple choice.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of close to like Finman 2 when I did, I think. Okay. Well, there's still some principles that we can go through. I'll just run through them really quickly, and then we can try some more theoretical questions. Okay, well, this one is kind of theoretical. How strong are you, confident are you with CAPM? Somewhat, really strong, in between, you hate it, you love it? Okay, let me ask another question. What is the CAPM formula? Oh, there's something in the chat. Oh wow, hate it, everyone hates it. Joy. Okay then. Let's try to see if we could at least improve the relationship. I can't guarantee that you will love it, but I can hopefully make sure that you don't hate it. Okay, let's see if I can get a whiteboard. Okay, so we all see in this whiteboard. Can you also see the screen? Oh no, let me see. It's always take longer to load when you're live. But let's talk to the question so long. The CAPM takes in two major arguments, well, three really. So for the CAPM formula, whenever we're using it, we want to know what is our excess risk premium, or our risk premium, our risk-free rate, and what they call beta, right? So let's read through this question really quickly and see if we can find some out. Okay. So we have looking through. We notice that a beta for our company is approximately equal to 1.1. So we can underline that. Now they give us the 6-month treasury bill and the 20-year treasury bond. More on that later. We know that one of them should be the risk-free rate. But we'll come back to that. And the expected return on the stock market is 11.5%. So based on that, we should have everything we need to calculate the cost of equity with a CAPM. Now, just how do we do that? Let's look back on the whiteboard. So let's write that down. Our beta is 1.1. Now, this is a question, which one is our risk-free rate? Should we choose out the 5.5% from the 20-year treasury bond or the 3.5% for the 6-year treasury bill? Any suggestions? Okay, can't choose either. 3.5 treasury bill. Okay, I mean, good suggestions, definitely. Now, what we're going to note is that this company gives bonds that mature in 20 years. So because of that, and because the end eventual goal is to calculate a WACC, and the WACC uses both debt and equity to keep things on the same level playing field. Since we have long-term debt, we should measure it against a long-term equity in that sense by using the longer-term risk-free rate. So I'm gonna call our risk-free rate the 5.5 from the 20-year treasury bond. And our market rate, market return, was given at 14.5%. That is right here. Let me just underline that. 14.5 and 5.5. Okay, does anyone remember how we use this to get the CAPM formula? What is the CAPM formula? You can just type it out in the chat or say it. Just to make sure that we're studying. Silence is deafening. I'll give you a hint. It starts at the risk-free rate. There we go. Exactly, Roma. That's exactly what the formula is. It's a risk-free rate plus beta times RM minus RF, which is our market return minus a risk-free rate of market premium. Okay, so let's put all of that together. And we have E, our cost of equity, equal to risk-free rate of 5.5%. It's 1.1. 14.5 minus 5.5. I feel it's 9%. Note, mathematicians are the worst when it comes to math. Okay. I pull out my trusty calculator. Get 15.4%. Okay, so there we have it. Easy 2 marks. Okay, so the question continues by asking us, what is the best estimate for the after-tax cost of debt for IHR? IHR is this fictitious company that they made up for this question. Where does the 9% come from? Great question. I should have shown it a little bit more clearly, but this is our 14.5 minus 5.5. And I hope that it's 9. Yeah, just making sure. Okay, so now we move right along. We get our best estimate for the after-tax cost of debt. Now, this is actually kind of interesting. Let's see if I can get some more space. But how do we estimate our cost of debt? If we look at the question, we realize that that they don't directly give us what interest rate they are charging on their loans, on their bonds, to be more precise. We do know, based on the question, that they are selling bonds for a certain price and the coupon of the bonds. But what we don't know is the yield that they're giving away on these bonds. Now, if only there were some formula that we could use to find what a yield to maturity of the bond is. If only. So there are 2 major ways to do it. If you are fortunate and you have a financial calculator, you can just punch it right in. But otherwise, we are going to use the formula from class. It's an estimate. You want to remember what that formula is? Let's see. Okay, so just a reminder, the formula for yield to maturity. For coupon plus the face value minus the price, the face value minus price over n. N is the length of the bond. Yeah, that looks hideous. Divided by the future value plus 2 times the price divided by 3. Okay, so if you don't have a financial calculator, you can work out the yield to maturity that way. So let's actually try that. The coupon rate was 7.25%. So 7.25%. To find the actual coupon amount, though, we have to multiply that by the face value. How do we find the face value? Well, we look above here in this question and they tell us it's $1,000. So 1,000 multiplied by the 7.25%, would give us 7,250. Now, since the face value is 1,000 and they gave us a price of $889.50, we can fill this in here. I can get some more real estate. Oops. Okay. Okay, just making sure that the coupon rate is annual. Something I should have mentioned is that if it's not annual, then we would have to apply an appropriate multiple. If it was semi-annual, we'd multiply it by 2, right? Because we're getting paid twice a year. A divided by n. It's a 20-year bond, so it's 20. And then this is 1,000 for the face value. Plus 2 times our price. Divided by C. Okay. Yes, I know the formula looks quite, what's the word? Very not encouraging. But I think you will get a formula sheet, definitely. And because it's online this year, if anything, you can probably run these figures through a financial calculator, even an online one. There are a lot of them online, actually. So I'll quickly do this. In fact, I think you should also have this on the formula sheet, or you can, have a copy of the formula sheet. So the sign beside 7250 plus or minus. That should be, oops, you're right, that should be a plus. Thank you so much, Daniela. Danielia. Okay, so I get 8.4, let's call it 8.4%, rounding off. We can add some, yeah, let's call it 8.4%. Okay. Everyone is good with this? Like, we're fine with why we use this formula and the result that we got. Just a quick recap. They gave us the coupons for the bonds, and they also told us how much the bonds were selling for and the length of the bond. We are trying to find the after-tax cost of debt. The after-tax of debt, or the cost of debt, is looking at how much do we have to give to our investors in order to receive financing from debt. And when you think about it like that, it's not too difficult to see why this is our bonds, because the bond for a company is literally the company borrowing money from investors. So to find how much it's actually costing the company, we looked for the yield to maturity. If you had a financial calculator, you could enter this information in it, but we also have an approximation formula, which is the formula that I use to calculate the yield to maturity. However, we're not completely finished yet. We note that the question asked for the after-tax cost of debt. So that means that we now have to consider this tax. Okay. Now, what adjustment do we need to make to this 8.4% to consider the tax? Anyone? The tax rate is 40%, I believe. Yes, it says IHC is in the 40% tax bracket. Let me just highlight this. 40% tax bracket. Anyone? What adjustment would we need to make this 8.4%? Yes, perfect, Sandra. We multiply it by 1 minus 40%. Let me just write that down. 1 minus 40%, or 0.4. We do this because since debt or interest is non-taxable, we pretty much get it back. So we are decreasing the cost of our debt. Yeah, we get 5.04. Okay. Now I'll be the first to admit that was a somewhat long question and a well thought format. We continue. So part 3 of this asks us, what is the best estimate for the weight to be used when calculating the weighted cost of capital? Okay. Now, where would the weights come from? What are the weights? The weights for WACC. Remember, weighted cost of capital, if you think about it, that is where all of our capital comes from. And it either comes from equity or from debt. Now, how do you know how much exactly we have in debt or in equity? We checked our balance sheet. That's what the balance sheet says. We note that in terms of total shareholders' equity, we have about 80,000. Now, we have to be careful when it comes to debt. We're only concerned about the long-term debt when it comes to WACC, because this is the actual capital that's being used to finance the company. So we are just looking at our 40,000. Okay. Now with this in mind, let's calculate our weights. So to calculate the weights, the weight for equity is just the total equity, call it E, divided by equity plus debt. So total equity was 40,000. 40,000. That's actually confusing. I'll write 40K and K means 40,000. Okay. So this works out to be 1/3. And similarly, we calculate the weight for debt. D over E plus D. Using the same calculation as above, this is 2/3. Okay, we're going to making progress. Let's see if I can clear this. Cool. So what's next? Well, everything we've been leading up to actually is to calculate a WACC. And we'll be doing exactly that. Can someone remind me, what is the formula for WACC? You can just type it in the chat. Consider it a revision. Wow, Desante on the ball. Yes. Cost of debt after tax. Exactly. And if we had, let's say, preferred stock, then would have also included that. So that would have been the weight of the preferred stock multiplied by the cost of the preferred stock. But in this example, we don't have any. Okay. So whack. Using the same formula that the Sandra gave us. Beautiful debt to oversee. 5.04 was our after tax debt. This one third. What was our cost of capital for equity? Anyone noted it down? Let me see.
Hello.
Yes.
That what question you just did, it should be 80,000 and not 40K, as I put it there at the top.
Oh, let's see. Yeah.
Shouldn't it be 80K?
For here.
Not here. That's the line at the top.
This one?
Yeah.
Let me check.
Is it the total equity, which is 80K?
Oh, yes, yes. So shareholders' equity is 80K. Yes.
All right, that's good.
Okay, so we are paying attention. Nice. Let me change this. So that means that we switch them around. This becomes 2. Do this. Okay. And our equity from this question is 15.4. Okay. So what this works out to be. So I'm getting 11.946 or 11.95. Anyone else getting that? Okay, awesome, Michaela. So we're on the right track. So we already have to work, and the last question for this section to secure some good amount of marks is to get the current yield on the bond. Now, I think it's worth mentioning that when it comes to bonds, there's a whole lot of different types of yields, and it's really easy to be confused. So I'll try to differentiate. What we calculated first was the yield to maturity. That is the yield for the bond, assuming that you hold it. Okay, we're gonna go through that again, Daniela. But the yield to maturity is assuming that you buy the bond and you just hold it until it fully matures. The yield to maturity is the equivalent yield that you would have gotten if you look at how much you paid for the bond and how much you got at the end, if you put it in a bank account. The current yield now, it's a little bit of a simpler calculation, really. And it's really an estimate to get an amount of how much you get paid every year from the bond. Any other yields? Well, that's pretty much it. It's also worth noting that the yield for a bond isn't necessarily the market interest rate. So the market interest rate, as we did for this question, probably can be better approximated with the risk-free rate, but yield to maturity isn't necessarily that. Okay. All of that being said, let's calculate yield on the bond. And again, it's pretty simple. I'll do it here. It is simply the coupons. So current yield, let me write that. I'm writing these guys. The text box option. Annual coupon. So if like if you semi-annual, it means you have to multiply it by 2. Like if your monthly coupons multiplied by 12, etc. I'm gonna just type here as well. And that's divided by the price of the bond. There we go. Fortunately, at the beginning of the question, pretty much all of this was given to us. Remember that we calculated the annual coupon by multiplying the 7.25% coupon rate. That is right here. Multiplying that by the face value, which is 1,000. And that gave us 72.50. And the price of the bond, which was given, is 889.5. Once again, we use our trusty calculator. And we get 8.15%. Okay. Back to you, Danielia. Got 10.9%. Let me see. Okay, so just to confirm, we have the same inputs here. That is the 5.04% for the after-tax cost of debt and 15.4% for the cost of equity. Okay. Let's confirm. I can never be too sure. I'll pull up this calculator and we can do it together. Okay. 5.04 divided by C plus 15.4 divided by 2 divided by 3. Okay. I think what happened, so we do get back the 11.95. I think what happened is that you didn't add the other term. So if I take the 15.94, multiply by 2, divide by 3, get a number closer to what you got. But it's not the same thing. But yeah, looking at the calculations, I think there was some error somewhere along the line. So probably just make sure that you enter everything carefully. Okay, so, oh, okay. Nice, Danielia. So that pretty much summarizes this question. And just like that, we would have gained a whole heap of marks. Before I move on, is there anything about this you want me to go through? Anything about CAPM? Or I think, oh, someone did ask about the case for price into share, right? So let's see if we can go to an example for that. I'm gonna make a fictitious example just so that we can understand. So we're going to be using the dividend growth model because there are two ways that they can give us these type of questions surrounding the cost of equity. In this case, they gave us what we needed to calculate the CAPM, but in other cases, they may tell us something about dividends. That means that we can also calculate the cost of equity, but we would have to use what is called the dividend growth model. Right, that's the infamous model. Okay, actually, you can use some information here to tell us the price of the share. Now, let's assume that the dividend was $1. So dividend, actually, I'll write again. So dividend equal $1. Right? We saw earlier in this question that the share price is actually $7.50 per share. share price equals 750. And now we're also going to make another assumption. And let's say that the growth rate of the company is faster. The company grow, let's say 5%. Let's make it a little bit smaller just to be safe. Let's call it 2%. Okay. So let's assume that instead of getting the beta and the market return, they gave us the share price and the growth rate. And just to clarify, this dividend that was paid was last dividend. Let me just clarify that. Last dividend. Okay, so after this information, instead of the CAPA model, how would we go about finding the cost of equity? Because this is something that they do often as well. So instead of giving us the CAPA information, they may give us some information about a dividend. So how would we go about trying to get our cost of equity? Hint, you have to use the dividend growth model. Does anyone remember how it works or what it is? Yes, no, maybe. You can hear the gears turning in your mind. Yes. And just to clarify, I did my screen go black. Okay, but just to clarify, hello? That was so strange. I disconnected for a moment. Okay. Let's continue. So yes, you are absolutely right. That is the formula. But I'll ask you another question. That D in the formula, is it the last dividend or the next dividend? I probably should say to save some time, but in short, it is the last dividend. And that's, yes, perfect, Michael. That's something that a lot of people get confused with. So, P equals D1 plus G divided by I minus G. Where I is the actual rate that we were looking for. Okay. So from here, it's really a test of your math or algebra skills. We know the price, the share price is 750. the last dividend is $1. The growth rate is 2%. Then we have I minus 2%. Okay. Now from here, it's really just algebra. But before we move on, just to confirm that we're on the same page, if I gave you the next dividend instead of the last dividend, what would be on top? What would be the numerator? Would it be D times 1 plus G, or just the next dividend that I gave you? Someone trying to say something? Okay. Long story short, it would just be the next dividend, right? From here, it's 715. Algebra, that would be like I minus 2%. This is equal to 1.02. That means we have 750 times I minus 750 multiplied by the 2%. One 1.02. Okay. I'm gonna pull the 750 times 2% on the other side and multiply it by 2% to find what it really is. 750 times 0.02. 0.15, and we add that to the 1.02. 1.17. I is 1.17 divided by the 750. Okay. That's 15.6%. Ironically, it's actually pretty close to what we got the other way. Even though the numbers were chosen arbitrarily, that's not always the case though. Okay. So we are cool with this. If I give you a similar problem, would you be able to do it by yourself? Or if I'm a CAPM and everything? Okay. Anyone else?
How you come by the 1.17?
Okay, good question. So they should stop skipping steps, but to break it down a little bit better. So I got it from having the 1.02, and then I took the 750 times 2%. Times 2%. Yeah. So when I work this out, I got 1.17. That helps?
I'm trying to understand because it was I using my phone and everything is kind of look a bit jumbled to me.
Oh,
So after 7.50 minus 7.50 times 2% equal 1.02. Then the other line is 7.50. And okay, and that is how you get the 1.7, the 1.17.
yeah. From
Okay.
bringing this other side thing on the other side.
All right.
Then
Just
from
let me
there, yes,
write
no
this
problem.
down, please.
Then from there, we just divide out the 750 and we get our cost of equity.
So actually, we were trying to find the rate, right?
Yes.
All right. All right, correct. All right, thank you.
No problem. Okay. So we're fine with this part. I think this is capital structure. I think that's the section for this course. I mean, the more technical parts really for this one is really CAPM, dividend growth model. We'll see some NPVs later. Okay, but we seem fine. Let's move right along. Okay, this is a very typical time value type of question.
Actually, one come from the stuff.
Okay.
I'm gonna raise my voice past you my mouth.
So let's look at it. The Susan Dreams house is estimated to be 100 million. The prevailing rate of interest is 12% per annum, compounded continuously. Now, if she were to obtain a 25-year loan for the procurement of the house, and now they ask us to calculate her monthly payments, etc. How do we go about calculating monthly payments? There are quite a number of ways. Okay. Now, let's see where to begin. The first thing that we're going to notice is, let's look at the rate of interest that they gave us. We notice that it's at 12% per annum, but it's compounded continuously. They asked us to calculate a monthly payment, not a continuous payment. That means that we have to get the rate of interest in a monthly version. So the very first step is actually to convert the rate of interest. Let's do this. Okay, so we know that at some monthly rate, some 1 plus I divided by 12 raised to 12 should be equal to E raised to our our continuously compounded rate, which should tell us is what, 12%? Okay, this makes sense. So this is just the equating the monthly rate to our continuous rate. For clarity, now the mathematical part comes in here because we have to find our I over 12, right? Because that's actually what we want to make these calculations. Okay. So we can start by raising both of these things to 1 over 12. So we can just divide here by 12, both of them. Put that in a different color. Okay, so we end up with 1 plus I over 12. And E divided 0.01. All that left is to do now is to subtract the minus 1 and then multiply the 12. So I over 12 0.01 minus 1. And what is this number? Again, I'm going to pull out my trusty calculator. 0.01 is to the what E is 0.01. Yeah, minus 1. Right. And the number I get raised to the raised to the power 12. Desandra, you mean this one over here? Okay, great question. So we want to get a monthly rate because there are, okay, we want to get a monthly rate. And in order to get that, we know that we can equate the rates at different points. So at the end of a year, even if it's compounded monthly, continuously, semi-annually, every week, at the end of the year, there should be some equivalent rate that equates these two things. Now, we have to ask ourselves, how many months in a year, basically? And since there are 12 months in the year and we want to have it at the end of the year, then we use 12. Okay. Now, when I do this calculation, you get 0.005. Now, okay, whenever you're doing calculations with the interest rate, especially for the time value of money part, you want to be precise as possible. So even though I'm only leaving it up to about 5 decimal points here, I'm going to keep the full figure in my calculator. Not sure if you can see it, but yeah, I'm going to keep the full figure here. And I'm going to store it. I know some calculators have that. If yours can, definitely take advantage of it. Okay. So we have our interest rate, I over 12.
Where is that?
Roger road so fast, the roads are shanty, so stay out with them no one noise.
Hello? Ask my question. Okay. So now that we have our interest rate, we are well on our way to solving the rest of the question. Now that we have everything in terms of monthly terms, we still have to calculate our monthly payments. So we have, let's write down the parts of the equation. For a loan. So we're going to express this as a single equation that describes taking out a loan and making repayments. So we start by looking at the present value for the loan that we took out. So we are going to borrow $100 million today.
Tajari.
And we're going to be making some payments. We can call them anything really. And then this would be multiplied by the present value of the annuity. Not a co-host, nothing I could do about that. Okay. Continuing. Yeah. So we're going to multiply this by the present value of the annuity. There are different notations for this. There's the accounting notation. I think it's PVA something. I'm not too sure, to be honest. I've studied actuarial science. Might have got my degree in it. So I'll just use the actual notation. Are we cool with that? The actual notation looks like this. P N. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay, but what is AN? So AN is equal to 1 minus 1 over 1 plus I is N divided by I. Okay. Now in this case, our I, which was what we just solved for earlier, is the monthly rate, right? So I know it says I over 12, but because we're planning it on a monthly basis, then that would be the rate that we would be using based on the period. What's important to note about these annuity formulas is that they are based on the period. So since we're doing monthly payments, we need a monthly annuity. So that means that the total payments would be calculated in terms of months, and our interest rate would be compounded monthly as well. With this knowledge, let's see if we can calculate the annuity factor. But first, let's try to answer the questions. What are these things that we'll be using for the formula? We already have our I right here. So this is what we'll be using for I. Now, what's our N? N is the total number of periods that you'll be getting paid for or paying for. Now, it's a 25-year loan, but how many months is in 25 years? And that's pretty much the answer to how many payments we'll be making. We know that there are 12 months in a year. So multiplying 25 by 12 should be a good idea. That's 300, I hope. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Danielia. Okay. So now we have everything we need for this formula. All that's left really is to calculate what the annuity factor would be. And let's do that. So AN one minus 1 over, what's that then? Our interest rate from 1 plus our interest rate from below. So 1.0, 1.005 raised to 300 all divided by our interest rate. Note at the bottom, it's not 1 plus the interest rate, but just interest rate alone. Okay, now I'm not going to go through the nitty-gritty calculations. I'll just be entering that in my calculator. Okay. And I got 94.55. Let's move on to math. Okay. So we now have A and I. Now let's go back to the formula, our original formula. 100M is equal to the same 94.55 multiplied by our monthly payments. So really all we have left is to divide out the 94.55. That's what we get. So R equals 100M. Divided by 94.55. The recordings. I'm not too sure. I think Kimani and Chanel would have more access to that information. They're recording, so they'll probably distribute them later. Yeah. Thank you for more clarification on that later. That would be nice. But they'll give you the recordings because it is being recorded. Okay, going to be uploaded. Beautiful. Okay. So our monthly rate, let's do that. That's 100 million. All right, so be careful. I'm writing 100M, but when we actually punch it in our calculator, let's try to be as clear as possible. We're not confused. And I got equals 1.058 million. Yeah, I got the same thing. I'm just rounding off. Yes, if one found the right track. There we go. And just like that, we have our monthly payments. The question takes it a step further and asks us for the total payments. The total payments, it's actually much simpler. In fact, they only allocate 1 mark towards it, and the whole 7 marks just for getting the monthly payments, which is, I mean, definitely well earned. But for our monthly payments, one second. For our monthly payments, we just multiply it by the total number. For our total payment, sorry, we just multiply it by the total number of payments, which is 300. So let's see. For our multiplied by the 300. This works out to be 1.058 times 300. So that's 317.302 million. It's a lot of money. It's definitely unrealistic for $100 million house. Okay. So the total payment is actually straightforward. We just look at the total number of payments that we'll be making and the amount of each payment. Now, total interest to be paid, if we're looking for the total interest, we consider For any part of any loan, there's the principal and the interest. After we subtract the principal, the interest is what's left back. Using this principle, it's not too hard to think of the formula for the total interest after each loan. So total interest equals total interest is just what we have for all of our payments, the total payments minus the principal. And the principal is just what we took out for the loan. So this would be equal to 17.30 million minus 100 million. Okay, and that just works out to be 217.02 million. Question. Let's see, is it that we don't always times the amount with ANI? Okay, which amount? As in R? Sorry, someone was asking a question. 100 million times the figure we got for ANI. I think you're talking about trying to calculate our. Let me go over that principle a little bit better. So it started from the root equation, 100 million, which is the principal for the loan, right? And what we are doing is we're asking ourselves, if we make a payment of R, whatever R is, every month for 25 years, what would need to be what would it need to be the present value of these payments so that we can actually break even with 100 million? We want that when we discount all the payments made in the future to our current time, it equals 100 million. So we get back our money. So that's the principle. Because of that, we multiply the ANI by our R, which is our monthly payments, whatever our monthly payments are. And once we have the ANI factor, it's just a matter of division, really. If you put the ANI by the 100 million, then it would be like paying $100 million a month, right? Which is kind of crazy based on the question. Okay. So we have our total payments and our total interest. No problem. Now, the last part of this question for 5 marks asks us to calculate the difference between the time taken to double an investment at the rate used by Susan's loan and the time approximated by the rule of 72. Okay. This is again a pretty popular type of question. Freya loves this type of question. Loves them too much. Okay. So let's think about it logically, what the question is really asking us. They want us to calculate the difference between the time taken using these two different methods. That means that we have to calculate the time taken for both methods and then subtract them. Okay, so let's start with the time taken for Susan's loan. They're asking us, if we have $1 today, right? Let's just call it 1. And we are saving it at the rate that Susan is saving it. I remember she's doing 12% per year continuously. So just for clarity, this is being multiplied by E is to 0.12. And we're trying to find when does this double. So you put in $1. It's been accumulated at this rate based on Susan's current rate. We want to find out what t makes that equal to 2. Okay, this is where the mathematical gymnastics come into play. So this is 1 times e to the 0.12. We can really ignore the 1. Let's call it c